My dad, he always said if there wasn't enough money to give his son and his daughter the same education, that his daughter would have the better education because he never wanted me to be dependent on a man.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Beyond the Bar podcast. I'm your host, Denisa. And today I have a very, very special guest. I'd say she's a trusted guide for families navigating, really tough transition, separation, divorce. And it's someone who I'm really getting to know, but have experienced, and I'd say, blends intelligence, compassion, definitely compassion, great perspective. I've also learned and about to learn more that she's a global traveler and so much more. And so welcome to the show, Carmen Rodriguez. And I am just thrilled to get to know her story. She's a mediator, she's a collaborative attorney, and I cannot wait to dive in. Welcome to the show, Carmen.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity to meet you and to say thank you to you for everything that you do to educate the entire matrimonial community in terms of things to watch out for so that we are better mediators and collaborative attorneys for our clients. So
Well,
thank you.
thank you for that. And I have to say though that we started chatting just briefly, and I finally said, let's save this energy for our conversation. I have so much respect for what all goes into shepherding people through this very difficult transition, because you really are getting people at their sort of a shadow side. But before we go there, I'm so curious about your story. Tell me your story, and where did it all begin, and how did you end up here?
Oh, well, thank you. I think that's such a fascinating question. And it brings back Alex Carter, who is just a world-renowned mediator and a professor at Columbia, who wrote the book Ask for More. And one of the preeminent questions that Alex brings up is you should start a question with tell me. And that's exactly what you just did. Tell me. So I really appreciate the question, the open-ended question. So my story, I am Cuban-American. My parents immigrated from Cuba. My grandparents are from Spain. Um, I am a mother. I am a wife. I am an attorney mediator. I love what I do. I, on a daily basis, I practice gratitude because even when little things go wrong, there's always so much to be grateful for and so much to remember the good things about the day. So it's sort of interesting when my children were very, very little, I would always ask them, name three great things about today. And so here we are, fast forward, and I still do that every day.
Wow, that is such a great practice. I think we get lost in the busyness of the day, and if it's even, middle of the day, it's a good reminder. You know what? I was able to brush my teeth, and I'm able to
Right.
see the sunset and the sunshine, and hear the birds sing, and that is such a profound question. Do you rem So how old are your children now?
Oh, so my eldest is 33 and he's a doctor, and my youngest is 30 and he's doing private equity.
So what would you say when you started asking them these questions, or that question, what was sort of what has the evolution been like? Do you remember some of the earlier answers? Like, how old were they when you asked them?
Oh, they were very little. It would be kindergarten, first grade, second grade. Well, of course, they're children, right? So
Yeah.
some of the answer were like, Mom, it was a terrible day. There was nothing great about today, you know? And
Right.
so then it's kind of like, well, you know, let's think about that. And so, did you get to play at recess? Did you have lunch? Did you sit with a friend at lunch? Whatever it is, but trying to find those little nuggets. But of course, always recognizing you know, life isn't easy, and there are going to be those bad moments, and that's okay. To work through those bad moments.
So tell me about your 8, 9, 10-year-old. What were you into? What were you like? What's your memory from that time?
So when I was around that age,
Yeah.
so around that age, it was a hard time because racism is very real. And I was growing up in a town where we were the only Hispanic family. In fact, we were the only family of color. There was one Jewish family who moved into town, and they left after a year.
Mm.
And I think one of my most poignant memories is coming home from school one afternoon. And I don't know if you remember those vinyl tablecloths that had kind of like felt underneath them. So
Yeah.
my mom had one of those on the kitchen table. And I walked in and I saw this mother, and I'm not going to use her name, but she was crying. And she was feeling the anti-Semitism in the town. And
Mm.
she was asking my mom for counsel, for guidance, like how did my mom cope with the racism of
Mm.
growing up in that town in Massachusetts. And that really stayed with me. It's very hard. Um, but I think, you know, once we could afford to travel, and I think that's part of what inspired my passion for traveling, is to just get to know and understand so many different cultures and people, and really just learn from each other. And I'm just passionate about learning about other people and understanding their perspectives, because if you hear somebody else's perspective together, working together, hopefully we can create a better product, come up with a better outcome. And so that was a tough question, Denisa. Those were some tough times when you're 10 growing up, and you're very different. No one likes to be different when they're 10.
No. No, and thank you for sharing that. I love that. I love how vulnerable and just open you are about describing exactly what that was like. I I had my son very young, and I grew up in Czech Republic, and I believe you visited Czech Republic, so
Loved
we'll
it.
we'll we'll definitely go there. But that was during a time when there weren't many sort of the minority there were gypsies, so you
Mhm.
really didn't see anybody of other than it was a Caucasian nation. Anyway, so my brief stint in the U.S., I became pregnant. I returned with a biracial baby. And it was like, what's going on? And you knew that he was very cute, but you
Right.
sort of stood out. And yeah, you've experienced that, and even people who were around you just really didn't know quite what to say other than, well, he's very cute. This is a very cute situation, but just
Right.
it was very different. And later on returned to the States and been here for many years. And unfortunately, my son has passed 3 or 4 years ago. But so I like, and he was the reason why I started these conversations to talk about life. So what's fascinating is, so you remember this. How do you think that feeling or that memory then had shaped you to do what you do today, and sort of the path in between?
Well, first, Denisa, I'm so sorry to hear of your son's passing, and I
Thank
can't
you.
imagine as a mother. Um, and watching you as often as I have, I know that that must have been so hard, and yet you've powered through. Um,
Thank you.
so I'm really sorry.
Thank you.
Um, how it's shaped me for who I am, I in my practice with every client, I want to get to know them, and I want them to trust me, and I
Mm.
want to help them. And the reason I want to help them is because if I can help the parents get along better, then that lowers the temperature at home, and that makes for a better life for the children. And that's what it's all about. It's all about the children. And I help the parents refocus on what's important. And what's important are your children. Nothing on this planet, and you know this, Denisa, I can see it in you. Nothing on this planet is more important to you than your children.
Mm.
And so that's how it's shaped me. It's just to understand how to work through these unsettling times, but stay focused on what's important.
Wow. You know, there's as you're saying this and it's unfolding and this is feeling I'm so full of of emotion right now.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to.
No, no, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. I actually, Elias, my son, he's smiling. You know, he was the kind of person, you said something about perspective. So African American, he was a U.S. Navy veteran, you know, struggled with PTSD, tried to self-medicate. I mean, this went on for years and years, and eventually, you know, took his life. One thing about Ellie, as we called him, he he was always this happy-go-lucky guy. I mean, he was in his late 20s, and he could go to a barbecue, someone who would have a Confederate flag hung up, and they felt a certain way about the world, but not about Elias. And Elias didn't notice it. And so it was not that he was oblivious, but he saw people as people. And so I remember our conversations. I also have a daughter. She's 26 now, Dominique. And I remember just we talked about everything to the point where it was like, Mom, oh my gosh, really? But but one thing that we did talk about is perspective. Like, however controversial the story of the news, the breaking news is, always ask why and always try to kind of look at the other perspective. So that is such a powerful thing that you mentioned.
Yeah, no, we always have to keep perspective, right? Um, no matter what we might be going through, no matter what the trials or tribulations are, um, we have to keep perspective on how much we have to be grateful for. At least I do. I mean, I went to Brown on a scholarship. I went to Columbia Law School on a scholarship, and that was out of
Wow.
the generosity of those who gave before that I could go, right? And then that changes the trajectory of not only my life, but the life of my children. So it's fascinating, Denisa. I don't know um if you've had a lot of interactions with people from India, but I have some very, very close friends. And one of the things I learned is that their perspective on life is that the first third of your life, you're focusing on education. The second third of your life, you're focusing on working. And
Mm.
the last third of your life, you're focusing on giving back. And think about that. I
Yeah.
mean, that is so wow, like what a perspective, right? Now it's my job to give back, to help the next generation.
Hmm. I love that. Oh my
Isn't
gosh.
that amazing? I
And-
know. I love that. I love that. I'm so glad you do too. And I think that's part of the reason why every time I've seen you, I really like I've liked you, but I've never met you. But it's like I could just sort of sense like she would get that. Like she would get that and like that is something to aspire towards. Um,
Wow, that is so profound. I, my wheels are turning right now. And you know the funny thing well, funny thing. as far as meeting in person, what I have found is that, at these events, I'm not into superficial stuff. I'm not into superficial talk, the small conversations. But it's hard to hear someone and have a really deep conversation at these, these networking events and the connecting events. So that it's nice to just sort of pause and think about, what's being said and someone's view of the world. So I'm curious then how so you went to some phenomenal schools. At which point in your life that you decided to become an attorney, or was that something that was a result of other events? Tell me about that path.
So my dad was a lawyer in Cuba, and in Cuba they follow the Napoleonic Code. So he couldn't continue practicing law here in the United States, but he had to provide for his family. So here's this man who was a corporate attorney, and how do you make a living? So he went to night school and he earned his PhD, and he taught, and he became a Spanish teacher. And my dad always said his best year of teaching was his very first year, because he didn't speak English very well, which really forced the students to have to speak in Spanish.
Huh.
And so he thought, I'll never forget that. But I'll share with you the best line that my dad ever said to me. So remember, he's a Cuban-American man, right?
Yeah.
And he was older, and so think of all the stereotypes.
Yeah.
But my dad, he always said, if there wasn't enough money to give his son and his daughter the same education, that his daughter would have the better education, because he never wanted me to be dependent on a man.
Love that. Wow.
I know.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
I
Wow.
know.
Oh,
I know.
thank you. Thank you.
I know. And when
That
you
is
think about
great.
like his age and the time period, like he was so ahead of his time.
Yes. Oh, I have goosebumps. I really have goosebumps, Carmen. This is phenomenal. You know what my mantra has been, and I've been telling my stepdaughters that, my daughter, and any woman I meet is like, man is not a financial plan. And however in
Love
love
that.
you are, and however happiest your marriage is, does not matter. You have your own station in life at any given time, all
Right.
the time. And
Right.
just the feeling of independence and freedom. Wow, that is amazing. So that stuck with you, obviously.
Always. Always, always. And one of the things my dad would say, and by the way, he adored my husband. Um, and then he would just say, and because I also have the same degrees that he does, if God forbid something should ever happen to Carlos, I have a degree, I have a profession, I can provide for us. So my dad was just leagues ahead of his time. I know. I know.
Wow.
I was very blessed. See, blessings. There's just so many things to be grateful for.
So you went to law school, and then when you went to law school and you got out of law school, what was your path to becoming a mediator, and collaborative attorney?
So that there was a little detour.
Okay. Okay.
No, I practiced law, really kind of hated it. It was very acrimonious,
Yeah.
not my kind of it's fascinating because growing up, I was always told, you're too sensitive, you're too sensitive, you have to toughen up, you have to toughen up. Um, and the legal profession is not a place for somebody who's very sensitive. And so I was never really happy as a
Mm.
lawyer. So when I was pregnant with our eldest son, my husband said to me, we have exactly the same education. You can do whatever you want to do. If you want to stay home with our son, great. If you want to stay working, that's great too. I will support you. And he completely left it up to me, and I remember so many times asking him like, "No, no, no, tell me, like, what do you really want me to do?" And he would be like, "Nope, you decide." And I chose to stay home, and I loved it. I loved being home with my sons. But I always tell every young mother I meet, being a working mom is the toughest job in the world because you have to be on at the office, and the second you walk in that door, you have to be on for your children. So
Mm.
there isn't much time for you.
Mm.
And that's so hard. And I always, like, it was the right decision for me. It's not the right decision for everybody. And I have tremendous respect for working moms. Oh, and so then how did I get into mediation? I have a really, really, I have 3 very close girlfriends. They're like sisters, frankly. And one of them said, "Carmen, you're such a great listener. You should look into mediation." And so I took a training at the New York City bar, and I felt like I met my people. And I was like,
Mm.
"Oh my gosh, this is it. This is what I love. This is how I can use my law degree. This is what I want to pursue." And so that's what I did. And I've never looked back, and I've never been happier with my profession.
And
And
it
I
sounds like it fits, like you're aligned with your thinking, the way you view the world, and sort of the messages instilled in you by your parents, your dad. It feels like you are aligned. Is that a true statement?
It's absolutely true. I am so comfortable with who I am and what I do. It feels great. And I sort of feel, Denisa, that you are very passionate about what you do because you're just nonstop about talking. And I don't think you could do that with the energy and the passion and the commitment unless you loved it. And I think part of you loves just giving and also teaching and helping,
Yes. Yes.
and that
You
really
got it.
comes through.
You got it. You got it. It's, it's also being humble and realizing I am an entrepreneur, a teacher. Those are things that I love to do, is to break down things that do not work or could be done easier and find how to simplify it. That is my gift, and to break down complicated stuff and just share that knowledge. It's not so much the work. There are others, I realize, who are much more experienced, and they really enjoy the work. So it's about team, assembling the right team, and then continuing to do, finding something that just grabs you. And someone that I interviewed connected the dots just like I did with you. And I asked you purposely, is there a moment when you were 8, 9, or 10 that you can recall, powerful, impactful moment, and you vividly, great storyteller, you vividly described it. I felt being there, and how, when you connect the dots where you are today, it sounds like you're perfectly aligned. Sort of, I'm looking at these 2 moments in time, and for me, it was, performing. Like, for my mom was a single mom. We traveled, and like her friends, little theater and teaching something, and just sort of pockets of that and how it made me feel. And that's sort of what I connected with today. I'm wondering too, as you have such a great energy about you, is how do you deal with, it could be adversarial, professional. We know two people going through transition of divorce or separation. I mean, that's a tough thing to do, and it's can be highly emotional. How do you deal when you have an attorney or professional on the other side who's almost like fueling the fire into the process and the
Yeah.
conflict?
Well, I'm sure, first of all, we could have a whole podcast on how to deal with attorneys in
Yes.
the room who are disruptive.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
Um, but I think the starting point is you talk. And you talk to, whether it's you talk in a breakout room or you talk privately, but you have to get on the same page and you have to align, like, what is our vision here? Our vision here is to help the parties
Mm.
through this very difficult process, reminding them they're always going to be a family and trying to lower the temperature. So how is it that what you've just said or done, how does that help the parties move forward? How does that help
Mm,
us get to the next step? And let's just talk through it. I mean, maybe I missed something. And if I did, please tell me. And I'm sorry, share it with me.
yeah.
But it all starts with talking.
So true. What do you notice like a shift? I call it a shift of energy. How do you when does that happen? When do you notice that that shift happens when something triggers you? What is that moment
Yeah.
typically?
Isn't that great, that shift in a mediation when like the temperature drops? Don't you
Yeah.
love that?
Yes.
I love that. That brings me joy, right? I mean, that's kind of that moment of, okay, I've made a difference. I've helped in this one tiny little way. Um, that is pure, pure joy for me. And I hope that the parties feel it and then it helps them lower the temperature and communicate better. A couple of days ago, I had a mediation where the two parents who were so acrimonious,
Mm,
they laughed. At the end, he said something and she laughed and she
mm,
smiled. And he brought that up, and he was so grateful
mm,
that that had happened, and we all laughed, and of course, I just brought it back to them, that it was their effort, their hard work, their willingness to push through, to keep talking, to put their child first, to
mm.
work it out, to listen to each other. Um, yeah, I love what I do, Denisa. I really
I can tell, yes. So tell me about how many countries have you traveled to?
I think we've been to about 84 countries. We've been to 6 out of 7 continents. I still have to get to Australia, but we've been to Antarctica. We've been to Penguin Country and walked on the glaciers and the icebergs. Yeah, it's phenomenal. We've been to the Czech Republic, and we loved it. You have a gorgeous, gorgeous the history, the culture, the heritage. It was just it was amazing. We loved our trip there. Most recently, we spent 3 weeks going. You know, we have these bucket lists, so I always wanted
Yeah.
to go to like Sweden and Finland and Denmark and Norway, all those Scandinavian countries. And so my husband and I, we did all 4 of them. We did one trip with all 4 because we
Wow.
decided, like, we'll do them all, and that way we can, like, really compare and contrast. Um, and it was a blast. It was an absolute blast.
Oh my gosh, that's like a podcast of its own. Do you so how did you begin this process? I mean, so tell me, yeah, how did you begin? Tell me about that. How did it
How
unfold?
did it begin? So it actually started, and it kinda goes back to my 10-year-old memory that you brought back, because I always felt different, and that's no fun. So
Mm,
it started with wanting to travel to other Spanish-speaking countries. So we've been to, um, I think all or most of the countries in all of South America. We've been to Costa Rica. We've been to so many, obviously, to Spain and to Argentina. It was just there's something, Denise, about being in a country where every other little girl is also named Carmen.
mm,
So remember when you were little, you would go into like a souvenir shop and there would be like these little bike tags and it had a name on it. And there were always, growing up in this town in Massachusetts, they were always very, they were names like Penny and Polly and Sally. Carmen wasn't one of them. And so I wanted something different for my children. I wanted them to be around where everybody is speaking Spanish. They're not different. Um, and to really appreciate the culture and the tradition and the history and the heritage. So that was what started all the traveling to all of these Spanish speaking countries. And then one year, um, our one of our sons said, Mom, can't we just go to London? I was like, well, yeah, sure. We can do that too.
Sure.
We
Throw
can go
that
to
in.
Great Britain.
Yeah.
Um, so that's how it all started. And then it hasn't stopped. And we've been to Israel. I can't wait to go to Jordan and see Petra. So I love traveling. I just love learning. I love meeting others.
So fascinating. It's so funny because when I met my husband, current husband, I was married before, and he's traveled. I mean, the furthest he went were the Caribbean islands. That's it. That was the extent of it, right? So here I am. I came from another country when I was a teenager on my own, and you just sort of settled here, but been traveled in between. And so I took him. Actually, his daughter first. So first, his daughter, she was, through her school, she lived overseas in Spain, in Barcelona, and then, but prior to that, we booked a trip to Prague, and for him to actually formally meet my mom. We got
Oh,
married. We got married 4 years ago. I said, at some point you have to meet her because that was right after COVID. And so we went, all of a sudden he goes from, no international travel to going to Barcelona and then and London. So in Barcelona, London on one trip, and then a month or two later to Prague. And my sister lives in Switzerland, so to Zurich. Um,
awesome.
so four countries. And he gets back and, we both go to the city for business, for fun, and because we're on Long Island. And then so we come back, go to the city, and he's looking around like, oh my gosh, all this time I thought this is it. Like, this is like
Oh,
the best city in the world. This is it's a magnificent architecture. And he goes, I'm looking around going, I didn't know crap. That's until I traveled to these countries and really experienced history and
yes,
perspective.
yes,
And it's an eye opener.
yes.
Yeah.
Especially
Wow.
the history in Prague. I
Oh
mean, the
my
Czech
goodness.
Republic, right? I mean, and
Yes.
the other thing is just sort of like learning the history of the world and understanding that, we are one country in a world.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. In this entire world, and
Right,
sometimes feeling like the world revolves around us, and no, you are this tiny little
right,
particle,
right.
and yeah, perspective.
Perspective.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And oh my goodness, that clock in Prague.
Oh yeah.
That clock is so amazing. So in our home, we have a tiny cuckoo clock. But I have to tell you that when I look at that cuckoo clock and I remember just like that unbelievable clock in Prague. It's just mesmerizing. It's just a work of art and technology and
Yeah. Yeah. That the old town square.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's and like every building tells a different story. It's so unique. And yeah, that's amazing. What would you do if you couldn't practice mediation or law in general? What would you do?
And I had endless funds. If I had endless funds, I would just I would keep traveling. I would
Yeah.
just, there's just so many I mean just like having that conversation with my friend of mine from India and how that conversation transformed my life and just kind of my
Yeah.
focus, like really giving back, really making this world better for the next generation and what part can I play to make that happen? And I think no matter where we go in the world, there's something that we can learn from others. And
Yeah.
hopefully there's something that we can teach them. Um, and working together, right? Kind of making baby steps to build something better, leave something better, make the world a little better. Um, I think as mothers, that's kind of part of our DNA, is that we want the world to be better for our children than it was for us.
Yeah, I love that. I had a turbulent sort of relationship, you could say that, or conflicted relationship with my mom, who at that time, I went from, what did I do? Feeling sort of like what just sort of isolated, to why did you do that to me? Just sort of over the period of time as I was working on myself, to finally have come to realize, our parents didn't have a tool. They didn't have the tools, or it was not, you sort of, you carried everything internally, and, you resolve things internally. There was no talking therapy. There was no, maybe it was there, but that's just like, if you look at that generation of parents, it's like, they were kids at one point, just like our kids. But you do have like what you said, you have the chance to sort of break the cycle. You can write whatever chapter you want to write. You don't have to, there's no need to be referring to the past and saying, well, that's really how I was raised. Or I do that because my parents. I don't believe in that. That's my personal belief. And I transformed it. And that's how I guide my daughter. Don't listen to me, don't listen to the past generation, learn from it.
Mhm.
Um, and then just sort of create your own path. But talking, just
I
talk.
love that.
Yeah.
I love
Wow.
that. Take the past, learn from it, study it, but forge your own future.
Yes,
Take the
exactly.
best from the past, but also kind of trust yourself, believe in yourself that you've got this and you can do this and you can move forward.
Yeah.
I love that, Denisa. I love that. That is, wow. Your daughter is so lucky. That's such a great lesson to live by.
And it's people. I've learned, my son was very, Elias was very fragile, and maybe didn't talk about his feelings and emotions. So it's boys, girls, people, just in general, talking. And I think it's so important, and that we start seeing each other as human beings, and kindness, elevating the humanness, just reconnecting with that. So I am really grateful for your time and
Well, thank
vulnerability and message today.
Thank you, Denisa. This has been such an honor, such a privilege, such a pleasure. Um, and definitely when I go to bed tonight and I think about three great things about today, I think meeting you is going to take up all three. So thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to get to speak with you today. Thank you.
Likewise, and this is just the beginning. And for our viewers and listeners, to find out more about Carmen and Rodriguez and how to get a hold of her, of course, you click on a bio link below. And until next time, be sure to follow our podcast channel, Beyond the Bar Podcast, and all social media. And until next time, stay curious and stay inspired.